Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to session 33, the future of FAFSA. It's great to see such a big crowd, and I'm assuming you're all here because you're very excited about the announcement about the mobile app that we are creating for the FAFSA. And I hope that some of you have already made your way down to the Resource Center. We have several tables set up to give you an opportunity to actually hold on to that phone yourself and get through the app and provide us with some feedback. We've gotten some excellent feedback so far. If you haven't made your way down there, we invite you to do that. We will be set up in the Resource Center through Friday, so stop by when you have a chance. These sessions are for us to walk through the app for you, and then there will be plenty of time for you to provide us with your feedback or ask any questions that you have. We have 2 microphones, so once we are done going through the application, we'll invite you to come up to the microphone and let us know what you think. So I'm going to introduce my co-presenter today. This is KG Papoulos.
Hi, everyone.
And I am Misty Parkinson. And KG is going to be the one who's actually going to walk us through the app. So we can go ahead and get started.
Awesome.
So this is the page that you all saw this morning with the different tile options that are available. And the only one that we've really fully defined is the My FAFSA tile, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. The other ones are concepts, and we definitely want to hear your feedback. What would you expect to see behind that tile if you were to click on it? Your feedback is really important. Actual student feedback is really important. We have been doing some usability. This is an opportunity for us to get feedback from you and your families. We are here in Disney. I'm sure some of you brought your kids. If you got some 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, bring them on over to the Resource Center. We'd love to get their feedback too. Okay, so Dr. Johnson talked this morning a little bit about a roles-based solution, and so before we get much further, I just want to clarify where we are with the app right now. This is what Dr. Johnson was referring to as FAFSA 2.0, which is the current question set, so all of those FAFSA questions that we have now, worded basically the same way. And what we have introduced here is the ability for the person who is starting the FAFSA to identify who they are. Are they the student? Are they the parent? Or are they a preparer? What that allows us to do is to customize the questions to them. So if I log in as a parent and I'm answering questions about the student, those questions will be presented to me as questions about the student. The parent questions will be presented to me as questions about me. If I log in as the parent, it goes the other direction. And if I log in as a preparer, then the questions will be phrased as student or parent. That's really as far as we can go. So I call this the faux roles-based solution because we need to make this work within our existing system. Our website doesn't allow for a true roles-based solution, and we have some challenges with a true roles-based solution that we need to work through, and I'm hoping that we can get some input from all of you today to help us get through those challenges. So once we're finished going through this app, I will sort of lay out for you what some of those challenges are and ask that you provide some feedback about that when you come up to the microphones. So we're going to go ahead and log in as the student. Okay, so this is one of my favorite pages in the app. We'll see this a few times. This is really to give the user a sense of what they've got ahead of them, what they've already completed, what they still have to do, how they're doing, making progress, and we have some customized messaging that people will see to, kind of guide them along the way and let them know what to expect or, what they've done well. So we're going to go ahead and click Next, and that's going to take us into Section 1, which is the student information. And KG is going to be typing in some identifiers that we've made up. But in order to use the app, the user will have to provide their FSA ID. And because they'll be providing their FSA ID, we're going to be pre-filling most of this first set of questions because the social security number, the name, the date of birth, email address, mailing address, telephone number, those are all things that we collect when they get their FSA ID, and we'll be able to pre-fill all of that.
So a couple of improvements that you actually see in here. One, we do use ghost text for the labels, so it's more intuitive, and the students or the parents or the preparers would know what question they're answering. So you can see that action in here. For example, if you click middle initial, it's still up there so that they have some sense of what they're trying to do as well. And then on the top right-hand side, actually, you'll see the percentage of completion for each of the section. That also allows you, or allows our customers to be able to see where they're at in the process. That's one of the feedback that we've constantly got from students and parents when we did some usability in colleges in Washington, D.C., is that they want to know where they're at in the process and how long they still have to fill out the form for in order to complete it.
And one of the things actually you can see it right now, you can see that KG has provided the first name and the last name, and so those fields have the green underline to indicate that they have been populated. You'll see that the middle initial field doesn't have that, so we're using that, that color identification to let people know which questions have been completed. And notice the question labels. We are right now talking to the student because that's how we've identified ourselves. And again, the use of the ghost text, we're hoping that that will reduce people's need to access our help. You're not going to see help text in the current version of the app. We're doing some usability, we're having some discussions. We're trying to figure out the best way to provide help to people. In the current FAFSA on the website, we have the help and hints on the right-hand side of the screen. We also, what we will have when we change that to the responsive application, we'll have the question mark icons next to the field so people can access the help that way. So if you have any specific suggestions about the best way to make help available within the app, we definitely would like to hear your thoughts. And here's a feature that we are really excited about. We were able to eliminate the need to answer 2 questions here. If you enter your zip code, you'll see that the city and state field automatically populates, so that's something that's new.
The other thing too is we wanted to make sure that the keyboard is intuitive. So as you see, if you are typing a street address, then it'll be alphanumeric, and then anything that's numeric will be a numeric keyboard. So that enables the customers to be able to type in their answers and responses more accurately.
Okay, and here's where we start to get into the questions that the FSA ID information would not be pre-populating. So we do have skip logic in the app that's similar to the skip logic that we have online. So here's where we'll start to see that. The question asking if you've lived in the District of Columbia for at least 5 years. So the question itself is pulling District of Columbia from the mailing address field. And then based on the answer to this question, this determines whether we will ask the specific questions about state of legal residence. So if we go ahead and say no.
No.
Then you'll see that we're asking what's your state of legal residence, because maybe you've lived someplace for more than 5 years, but maybe it wasn't DC, so let's find out. And in this case, we're saying California, and we can go ahead and say yes to that. All right, and here's another one that relies on skip logic. So based on your citizenship status, if you say you're a US citizen, we'll skip to the next sorry, let me say that the other way. If you say you're an eligible non-citizen, then we will display the question asking for the ARN. And if you say that you're a citizen, then we'll skip a question. Again, that's similar to what we do online right now. Go ahead and say citizen. All right, and then we have the 2 questions asking about the parents' level of schooling. Just answer them however you'd like. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the parent one. A totally wrong question. Sorry. Go ahead and say first bachelor's degree. All right, and then this is logic that we currently have online too. If you say you're working on your first bachelor's degree, then we assume you don't already have one, and so the answer to this question already populates.
So you can see in here too, we've tried to break down the questions into one question per view. I think that's when we were doing usability as well, we wanted to be cognizant of how we frame each question so that it's not just overwhelming, but it's also intuitive, and that it will be presented to the students, the parents, or the preparers in a manner that they could digest it easily and be able to navigate through the application.
And so you'll see a mixture throughout the current version of the app. At the beginning, we're generally confining ourselves to one question, but once we get into the financial section, you'll see sometimes we have 3 and 4 on a page, and those are those god-awful questions that are like 19 paragraphs long. So you'll see when we get there. We definitely would like your feedback about the best approach. We've been getting some interesting feedback about that in the Resource Center, whether people have a preference to scroll fewer pages or if their preference is to not scroll and have to click next more often. So I think that's a personal preference, and it's interesting to hear what people have to say about that. All right, you can go ahead and say never attended. Let's go ahead and say mail. All right, that's another question that depending on how you answer it, it determines what other questions display. So if you indicate your mail, then we ask if you're registered with Selective Service, and if you say no, then we'll ask if you want us to register you. You can go ahead and say yes. And here's an example of the scrolling state picker. And here are the parent schooling questions. And we have completed step 1. So we're taken back to the checklist page. You can see section 1 has been completed. We are trying to be, cheerleaders and let people know how great they're doing. So our text that says you've completed a milestone, and we've got some basic information saying, so far you appear to be eligible, because we've asked some basic questions at the beginning that establish basic eligibility for aid. So you see that section 1 is in green and it's got the check mark to indicate it's been completed. Section 2 is in blue and it's got the arrow to indicate that that's where we're going to be going next. So you can go ahead and click next. And here is the first of 2 searches. So we have the high school search and then we have the college search. I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about this one, KG, because for both of those we did do some usability to try to help us with our design.
Yes, and so basically for the school selection, what we wanted to make sure is that the students would be able to properly input their selections, and that it's also customer friendly. So we'll try to go through here real quick. And then I'll just say, so you have 2 ways of entering your college search. It's either through a federal school code or searching through city, state, or name. If you search by city or state, for example, let's say Washington, and then District of Columbia. Oh, no results. There we go. So what you can see in here is that you could actually, as you select each of the states, you see the counter on the top right-hand side to help you indicate how many colleges you're selecting. If you delete one college, then you see it also getting reduced. One of the feedback that we've been getting from students and parents is that in this case, because we have such small real estate, it's not necessarily a desktop when we view it. We wanted to make sure that as you select the schools, it's also intuitive for you. In addition, because there are, as you can see, plenty of selections for the colleges, you could narrow down those colleges by using the search button. So in this case, let's try George Washington University Law School. You could either do a new search or next. So for example, if you're sending colleges to multiple states and multiple cities, when you click on new search, it does save your selections and it lets you know right off the hand how many schools you've selected so far. You could go back to reviewing it, add more schools. So let me just try that in here. And you can search again. So search 10. 10 10 will be the maximum for FAFSA 2.0. If you click next, actually, what we've tried to do in here is we've consolidated also the questions about your housing plan. You're also able to move your college selection up and down the list if you want to. You can delete them as well. So in short, what we've tried to do really is to make it more intuitive for our students, and then let me just select that, off campus. Anything you'd want to add, Misty?
I don't think so, no.
Oh,
Okay.
that is one thing that we wanted to highlight. So there are edits. So for example, if you've missed a question or a field, then it lets you know with a frowny face to please provide a valid response.
Which we hope is much more intuitive than the way things work on the website right now, where the error message is up at the top, and sometimes you have to scroll down in order to find which question is actually in error. So this is tying the message directly to the question that has the problem. And we've completed another milestone. So section 2 is now complete, and we're going to go ahead and move to section 3. Now, the marital status question has been moved from section 1 to section 3 because really the purpose of it is to help us determine the student's dependency status. And here, I think, is the first example where we have more than one question on a page, and it really starts to look a little crowded. So this is the first point, I think, where we're looking for feedback. Technically, you can see everything you need to on this page, but there's no white space. You don't have to scroll in order to get through these 2 questions. Do we like this? Or do we want to split it into 2 individual questions? So that's some feedback we'd love to hear from you. No. All right, and here are the next, I think, 5 questions that we're displaying in sort of a checklist format. So they are all displaying to the user, but it really looks like one question instead of 5 separate questions, and if none of them apply, then the user would simply select none of the above. And this is the question that's used to determine whether or not we should display the 3 individual homeless questions to the user. So let's go ahead and say yes, just to show it. And then this is also following that checklist format. So you have all 3 of the homeless questions listed, but it looks like it's just one question. And then if you choose none of the above, then you can move on. All right, and so this is the point where we're going to be giving them an idea of what to expect next, whether they're going to be able to proceed without providing parent information or whether parent information is required. And in this case, parent information is required. So we're going to go ahead and click next. It's the mommy owl and the baby owl. Sorry, the parent owl and the child owl. Sorry, I'm the mommy. I assumed this was me because it's all about me. Okay, so. Sorry, we're conferring here. Okay. So we have been simultaneously working on multiple versions of the app. I told you that we were in 2.0. We're also working on a version that we've been calling 2.1, and that's our attempt to try to resolve the whole roles-based thing, which we would like to get your feedback about. It's possible that we have actually gone into 2.1 instead of 2.0. So we'll talk about that. So one of the okay, so with 2.1, what we are thinking is that we will give the user the option at this point to either continue answering the questions in the order that we display them, which is, the grouping of student questions first, followed by the parent information and the parent financial questions, followed by the student financial questions. The reason we ask the questions in that order, for those of you who are new, is to allow for a simpler experience with fewer questions for those people who qualify for an automatic zero EFC. And for a dependent student, eligibility for an automatic zero EFC is based on the parent's information. So by capturing the parent financial information first, we potentially are able to allow for the skipping of the entire student finance section. So we have a little bit of a struggle here. Do you make everybody answer the student questions in order to keep the student questions grouped together and then allow the parent to take over the app and finish it? Or do you insert this option that lets them choose, to either continue answering questions about themselves and then have the parent come in later and do their part? So in this instance, you are logged in as the student, and so we're asking, do you want to continue, or do you want to invite your parent to come in now and do their part? So let's go ahead and say that we're going to continue and enter your parent info now. All right, let's go ahead and say, let's say divorced or separated.
So we do also have an example here of the contextual help that we're trying to also explore. So this is in a conceptual stage. So we're trying to test different ways of presenting help and just additional information about the questions. One example in this case is that it hovers up as you click on that question mark, and then it gives you the definition of marital status and allows you to answer that. So we would definitely love your feedback on how to best present help topics or help options.
Okay, let's click next. Here's another example of skip logic with any response other than single. We ask the date of the marital status, so you just pick anything. And for the app, which parent's information will be provided really actually doesn't matter, because the way that we expect to be asking the questions is not going to be specifying. For those parents that are not married, we're not going to be specifically asking questions about the mother or the father, which we do online. That's the way we customize it online, but we're really trying to get more, we're really trying to get more towards, gender neutrality. However, we still have to ask the question, because people may start the FAFSA in the app and then want to switch over to the website. We need the answer to this question in order to make it work properly on the website. This also is going to help us to know which field to put the parent's information in. So the parent's SSN, name, date of birth, and then the income earned from work question. We need to put it in the right field so that our system knows how to do messaging on the back end, like SAR comments and things like that. So it seems like an unnecessary question, and it is an unnecessary question for the app itself, something that hopefully we'll be able to figure out how to address later, but it is necessary in order to allow us to allow people to move from the app to the website and do messaging properly. So just pick. Make anything up. And in this case, keep in mind that we're still working on this. We brought this to the conference in order to get your feedback, but we definitely still have a lot that we need to do. So some of the question labels, perhaps are not quite right, and some of the functionality may not be working exactly properly. But I think overall it's in very good shape and a really good way for you to see where we're headed. All right, one of the things that we learned during some usability testing that we did earlier this year is that people have a very, very hard time answering the household size question. And we, in addition, we want to balance simplification and accuracy. And so we are asking more questions with this solution that we're about to walk through, but we believe that we are going to be getting more accurate information for this particular field. Right now, the household size worksheet is an option. There's a button on the website. People can click on it, and then they will get all of these questions, and then we will calculate the answer for them. Probably people aren't clicking on it very often. So what we've decided to do here is not make it an option. We're going to require them to answer these questions. So it's, we do an automatic calculation for the parent. If they're married or unmarried and living together, that would be 2. Any other marital status, it would be 1. It's 1 for the student, and then that leaves 2 questions for them to answer. Whether or not the parent has children, and then if there's anybody else that is a dependent. And then once those questions have been answered, then we do a calculation. You'll see, go ahead and, yeah, very good. And you'll see that it automatically calculated to 4. So it's 1 additional question, and it hopefully is resulting in a more accurate response because we were specifically breaking it down to help them do that calculation correctly. And here's the number in college. And I'm not sure if this is the first example of this, but we do have some very lengthy questions, and this isn't especially lengthy. There are some that are more lengthy that we'll see when we get into the finances, but I think this is a good example of the full question has a lot of critical information, but if it's too long, people aren't seeing it all. And so you can see what we did here is we used 2 different font sizes, colors, so that do not include your parent, instead of being the second sentence in that question, kind of stands alone, and we're hoping that that draws more attention to it. And you'll see more examples of this when we get into the additional financial information and untaxed income sections where we have a lot of do not include, and there's like a whole bunch of text. So you'll see more of that as we go along. And we're rock stars. So we have now completed the parent information section, which is section 4, and we're going to go ahead and move into the parent financial section. Now, for those of you wondering, there will be an IRS DRT solution within the app. It's not here because this is, a demo, and we don't have the ability to demo the IRS DRT here. But this is the section, obviously, where that would show up once we had captured all the information we need to determine eligibility to use it. We are having conversations with the IRS about how to make modifications to the DRT pages to allow them to look much better on a mobile device. All right, and then here is, like with the household size, we also on our website have an option which is a choice for the user to use the income estimator tool. If somebody uses the IRS DRT, there's no reason for them to estimate their AGI. If they already completed their tax return and don't use the DRT, there's still no reason for them to estimate their AGI, unless they're trying to maybe take a jointly filed tax return and break it down to represent just one person because of a marital status change. But for somebody who hasn't filed a tax return yet, which is a super low population of people, we do have this income estimator option that walks them through a bunch of questions in order to come up with an estimated adjusted gross income. But it is an option, probably not something that very many people need, and so you'll see that we made the option available via a link instead of a big giant button or something. Okay, and then based on the the adjusted gross income that you entered, it is possible that this student is going to qualify for the simplified path, and so this is the first of the group of questions that are used to determine eligibility for the simplified needs test or automatic zero EFC. So let's go ahead and say no to this so we can display all the questions instead of skipping. So these are the questions asking about the receipt of means tested benefits. We'll say none of the above. And we were not eligible to file a 1040A or EZ. So then we'll move into the rest of the financial questions, taxes paid and exemptions. And here's an instance where we do have 2 questions on a page, but it still leaves some white space. So feedback about how to break the questions up, whether we should have 1 per page, whether we should have as many as we can fit but still have white space, whether we should have a bunch and allow for scrolling. That's really good feedback that we would like to hear from you. Here's where we really start to see it looking a little more crowded, I think. So you can see some more examples here of the difference in font, the different color and size of the font in order to make the, all of the text stand out a little bit more. I think on this first page we have 4 different questions. So you can see that we have that header question asking if any of them apply to go ahead and provide the amount, but you'll see that we've also defaulted each answer to 0 because our data shows that that is the answer provided by most people. So if the answer is different, then a different amount should be entered, but otherwise there's no need to actually populate the field. So this is the page where I really start to feel like it's a personal preference, but we need to think about data accuracy and all that other stuff. Is it better to display it this way and allow for the scrolling, understanding that some people may not scroll and so they may click next and then maybe not answer questions they should? Is it better to break it down into 1 per page, which makes it easier to just click next, next, next? Are they reading it? Are they not reading it? There's a lot to consider, and as I said several times, we definitely would like your feedback about that. And obviously, some of these would be pre-filled for those who use the IRS data retrieval tool. And we would have the same solution in the app that we have online, which is no longer displaying the field and instead having the transferred from the IRS text to indicate that it came back from the DRT. And this is the asset threshold question, the same one that we have on the website right now, and so this is intended to eliminate the need to answer unnecessary questions. If the parent's assets are less than the asset protection allowance, then we don't need to know the exact amounts because it would have no impact to the EFC. So let's go ahead and say yes, just so we can see the asset questions. And we have all 3 asset questions on the same page, so this is another one where we could keep it the way it is, or we could potentially break it down into multiple pages. And we're almost done. So we have completed step 5. We just have 1 section left, and that's section 6. So let's go ahead and take a look at the student section. Looks very much like the parent section we just went through. So go ahead and say not going to file. I don't want to be too repetitive, so just put 0 and then next through everything. All right, so we have completed everything except the signature process. So congratulations is what it says, and now the last step is going to be to sign and submit. So let's go ahead and click next. And this is an area, KG, you can talk about this if you'd like. On the website right now, viewing a summary of your data before you submit is an option. On the sign and submit page, which is the very last page before you submit and get the confirmation page, we have a button at the top that you can click on if you want to view the answers to the questions that you've answered. So here we're displaying it with the accordion links and leaving it to the user to decide if they want to view it or not.
Exactly. So based on the feedback that we've gotten from students and parents, a lot of them throughout the application, we've said that we're guiding you through the process, but towards the end, they also wanted a recap of what they've just inputted because they want to make sure that they've properly, in this case, answered the questions, or if it's the parents trying to make sure that the student information is correct and then the student information is accurate as well, like the email address or the telephone number. And so what we've done is we've designed an accordion so you can see all of the sections that you've just filled out, and you could just click it, and then you'll see and scroll.
And this is another area where we would love your feedback. Is it better to have all of the sections collapsed? Is it better to have all of them expanded? Should we expand just the ones where data was entered? So for example, if it's an independent student and there's no parent data, should we keep the parent sections collapsed and expand everything else? What are your thoughts on that? All right, and here we have all the legalese that people have to agree to and indicate, that they promise they're telling the truth and everything's accurate. Go ahead and click on next. And remember, an FSA ID was required in order to even begin the app. So this is a signature box. You sign with your finger, but it's not something that we're capturing. It's not a legal signature. It's the FSA ID that actually serves as the signature. So we'll go ahead and click on Submit. All right, now we do not have a confirmation page because, remember, we are a dependent student and we have not captured the parent signature yet. So this is an indication to the student that they've done everything that they need to do, and at this point they need to have the parent come in, access the application, and provide their own signature. So we'll go ahead and click on Home, and we'll see if we can access this as the parent. Oh, I'm sorry. We're supposed to completely close it. You have to do the little tap. Okay. And watch the animation here. You may not have seen this at the beginning. Isn't this fun? All right, we're still using the save key in order to allow access, just like we do online, and this is not going to work for us, Tammy. What happened? It's a blank application. Okay.
Got it.
We'll get this. User error. We have to. Right now. Okay. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So because this is a test version, this is not indication of what it would really look like. So we're just going to have to keep scrolling through until we get to. Okay. So in real life, the parent would be taken, the parent would be taken right to, right to the end of the application where they're to provide their signature, but because we are working in a test environment, we're gonna have to scroll through in order to get there. KG, next time, let's be independent.
Yep.
All right, well, we're almost done. We'll keep going through so that we can go ahead and submit and show you the confirmation page. But in the meantime, why don't you go ahead and start coming to the microphones if you have questions to ask or if you have feedback that you'd like to provide to us. It looks like there's a lot. And although you won't see me or KG writing anything down, I just want to assure you that we do have note takers here, and so whatever you have to say, we will be capturing that.
Oh my.
We're almost there. Okay, so here we are, ready to sign as the parent. And here's the confirmation page, which you saw in the general session this morning. So there's a lot less information on the confirmation page here than what people are used to seeing on the web. On the website, there's so much you have to scroll in order to see it all. But we tried to boil it down to the most critical components, and we did do some usability testing to understand what people want to see on the confirmation page. So you can, I'll let you talk to this one, KG.
Yeah, so there's three things that basically came out of the usability for students and parents. The first thing is that they need to know where they're at in the process and what happens next after they completed their FAFSA. So you can see in here, it displays if it's been submitted, if it's been processed, it's been sent to schools. The second thing is they want to know what to do next. So there's also the My Checklist. That's part of the app where it shows you a detailed list or a push list of things that you could do after you've submitted your FAFSA. We also showed the expected family contribution in here. So you can see it's not a dollar amount, and then we do provide that contextual help defining what an expected family contribution is so that it's clear to the students and the parents what it stands for. So you see that question mark in there next to it that they could click. And then the last thing is that it gives them some idea of what their eligibility might look like for Pell Grants. We were very careful in the way that we worded it because our initial usability, some students and parents are prone to misunderstanding their eligibility, and so that's why we would say you're eligible for up to X amount of Pell Grants.
All right, so let's start taking questions and feedback. I'm going to go ahead and start over here.
First, I just want to say you all need to take a bow because you took that beast and minimized it to be as user-friendly as possible. So
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
I don't know how many questions because I have a lot. I guess the first question I have, in the old process, you could submit a FAFSA without signatures.
Correct.
Can you still do that?
No, because you're required to log in with an FSA ID, and so that serves as your electronic signature. So there's no need to give another option.
Okay, so then this leads me to my next question. If we're using socials and we now have the opportunity to use our finger for an actual signature, why is there a need for an FSA ID, as well as the fact that all the information transferred from the IRS is concealed?
The signature with your finger does not constitute a signature. We're not collecting it. It's not a legal signature.
Okay.
It's basically The FSA ID serves as the signature, but we require some sort of action to be taken to acknowledge that, you provided accurate information, you're not lying to us, you are who you say you are, and all that other stuff. So the FSA ID, because it's entered at the beginning, doesn't appear to be tied to the signature, so that, signature with your finger is like the action that represents the signing.
Okay, and then you talked about using different platforms, going mobile versus web.
Right.
So let's say my daughter, she does it today, like she did about 5 minutes ago. She texts me, says, "Mom, can you do your portion?"
Mm-hmm.
I sign on to my computer at work. What's the sync time? Is it like instantaneous?
It's instantaneous, so if she
Nice.
starts it on the app and then she saves it and tells you to go in, you can go into FAFSA on the web. You just need to have her identifiers, obviously, and the save key, and it will take you to the point in the application where she left off, and then you can continue. And if you're switching from the app to the web, so on the website, you as the parent cannot log in with your FSA ID. That's not changing. So you will still have the option at the end to apply your signature electronically using your FSA ID, or you could submit without signing and do the signature page.
Okay, and then just one more question. When you first started the tutorial, I noticed that it went right to 2018-19 academic year.
That's the only option right now.
Okay.
Yes,
but
we're
in the
building this for
future-
2018-19. We are not building it for 2017-18, but once we have it available for 2018-19, we do expect to make it available for the subsequent years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, I have a suggestion and 2 questions. So I'll begin with the questions. One is the color rotation and purple for parents. Is that going away for the app?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's going away online too, by the way.
Oh, too bad. I kind of like the color rotation. Okay. On the household size section, it's automatically showing the number of parents, the
Correct.
student, and then it's asking for your parents' children. I would suggest adding the word other before the word children, otherwise you might have double counting.
Okay.
Okay. And then the final question is, am I correct in assuming that if a student's a U.S. citizen but their parents are undocumented, they can't use the app because the parents can't sign it?
The student could use the app, but the parents cannot because
Okay.
they cannot get an FSA ID.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi. So you have on questions where it's like you're picking an option, like radio button type. Why is there a need for the student to hit next? Can you auto advance it? Because I think that might then give you fewer clicks, and then you can leave that room for making some longer questions into multiple.
I think that's something we can take back and look at. That assumes that
That's the selection.
that
So
that's the
yep.
selection. Right, so I think that that's something that would be a good question to ask for feedback. Do we assume that a selection is intended to be a final selection and try to advance automatically, or do we
Okay. so
consider
then-
that they may want to change the answer
Yeah,
then actively?
but that takes me to my next question. Why isn't there a previous? And then,
There is,
There's a back.
up at the very
Oh, it's
top,
on the
there
top.
was a back option.
And so when they're in the review section, is there an edit there too? What if they want to edit there?
No, but
I forget,
what?
are we
Yes.
going to? Yeah, so right now, there's not an option to go back to edit, but we believe, we've got a long list of questions to address after this conference, and that's on our list, and I believe that we're expecting people to be able to go back and edit, which is what they can currently do on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark French with the Connecticut Office of Higher Education. First thing, in the initial screen where it has all the my's, being from a state higher education organization, I think it would be great partnering to have my state and allow the states then to put in some information about their own financial aid programs. They could look at schools in their state, possibly what programs are offered at the schools. I think it would just be a nice partnering to combine the two. Secondly, a couple of observations that I had there. When it says, I am a parent, I would suggest changing that to I am the student's parent, because you're going to get students who are parents And they're going to get confused, which do I click on? Do I click on both because I'm a parent and I'm the student? Just a minor thing. Then I noticed you went in with this student as an undergraduate student, but you selected George Washington School of Law. Could there be an edit that would prevent that? Because I know that gets to be a real problem with schools that have undergraduate and graduate, and the undergraduate picks the graduate by mistake, and the FAFSA goes the wrong place. So just another observation that I would think.
Thank you. When I nod, by the way, that means somebody's taking notes, and we're going to
Okay,
go back
yeah.
and discuss that.
And then one last thing I noticed, it looked like when you selected the parent, the student could choose either mother or father, but you went in as a divorced or separated. Don't they have to put in the custodial parent in effect? Because you don't want them putting in the estranged parent.
Right. So there will be contextual help, and our discussions about this have focused on trying to address that specific issue, which is that people have difficulty identifying which parent they should be reporting. So right now, we're using the term FAFSA parent, which we would have to define, obviously, and we're going to see if we can use that FAFSA parent concept in order to get the right answer and then ask the questions appropriately based on what's
And I
selected.
have one last. At the parent's signature, would it be possible for the student at that point to have a request emailed to the parent email address that they put on,
So-
saying, mom, dad, whatever, please, I've completed the FAFSA, please go in and sign it?
So we do have that concept not in 2.0, but in 2.1. I can't remember, there's like two different points. Right, okay. So the idea is that they would have a choice to either send a text or to send an email to the parent based on the contact information the student has provided. And so the parent would get that text or email and know that it's their turn to go.
Thank you.
Again, I just want to clarify, that's 2.1, which is the roles-based solution, which we do still have some challenges. So 2.0 is the version that we're expecting to be releasing in the spring.
Hi,
Yes.
Misty. How are you?
Hi.
So a couple questions for you. Foreign addresses, I noticed that in the address entry there was assumed a U.S. address. For U.S. citizens living abroad, just a question about usability. So if you want to make a note of that.
Okay.
You asked a question, I'm giving you a couple of feedback pieces. One of them about the next button, and especially where there are multiple questions on the page. Standard app design would be not to highlight the next button until you look to the bottom of the page, so that'll force design use.
Okay.
I would highly suggest one question per page. I recognize that prolongs the experience, but I think it does solve the complexity question. I know that you're trying to do that, and landscape's important, but I would suggest that. It begs the question: are you saving by question or are you saving by section?
So right now, we're saving by section, which is the same thing that we do online. We have had some discussions about whether we want to maybe save a little more often, like in some of those longer sections, maybe the more complex sections. But at the moment, it's as you complete a section, which is
And
just like online.
Again, usability, you may just want to let the user know as you're saving
And
that
we
we
do
are
that.
saving.
You may,
Okay.
we didn't point it out, and you may not have seen it, but on that checklist page where we were focusing on the cute little icons and the You're
Yes.
the rock star,
You're
there was
the rock star,
actually
yeah.
text that said your application saved successfully or
Okay.
something like that.
So especially if you're saving midsection, it'd be helpful
Right.
to know that.
Yep.
And then I didn't hear you talk about renewals or corrections.
Okay,
Well,
so this app is for applications. It will also work for renewals. So if you are renewal eligible, you will be able to pre-fill, get through the application in a similar, actually very similar to how KG made it through when he went back in the second time, because the stuff was already there. It will not have correction functionality. It will not have the ability to view your SAR. That's something that we have to tackle, once we get the application out there. But it's definitely on our list of things that we want to build in, just not with this first release.
Great. And again, I want to echo the first comment. You all have done a massive amount of work, and it shows. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Cope. I'm from Saddleback College in Mission Viejo, California. I have a couple questions because I am the outreach person that goes to the high schools in my area, and I deal with parents, families, all kinds of stuff. We have a lot of students that are there that have parents that do not have social security numbers because we're in California, we're near the border. we don't have a lot of students that have parents with socials. So in regards to that question, they asked about the parents not having accessibility to use the app if they do not have a social. Was there a way to make it so that it automatically sends that parent an email with the signature page? Just to kind of, it would be nice to have that so they don't get confused and try and create an FSA ID, because I swear it's like every day somebody comes in, they're like, I tried to create this, but I don't have a social. And it's just kind of hard. So if they don't have that option, would there be a way to notify them that you don't have a social, you must sign the signature page as a parent? That's a suggestion I kind of have, and a question, like if that's possible.
It's a great suggestion. We'll take that down. Thank you.
So that would be my first one. The second is, again, with the language barrier, we have a lot of students that come in that me and my students can't help, because I only have students that are bilingual in Spanish and English. We don't have Farsi, we don't have Chinese, we don't have people that can help. So is there going to be a language option so that the students can change the language to help them to fill out the FAFSA easier?
It's not something that we have on our list right now, and as a matter of fact, I'm glad you asked the question, because our plan for our spring release is to make it available only in English. We won't have a Spanish version at that point either. But I think, periodically we do have discussions about making the FAFSA available in other languages, so we can certainly include that in that conversation.
Okay, and third and final question or kind of comment, I have a lot of students also who are visually impaired. And we have a hard time because they ask us, because we have a liability issue if we fill out the FAFSA on their behalf. So my students have asked me to ask this question: is there going to be accessibility for students who are visually impaired to have voice commands through the app, so where it can be read to them and they can respond via voice, kind of like Siri?
It will be 508 compliant, but I don't think we've talked about voice recognition, so that's something we can just add to the list. Taking
And
notes.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I had a couple questions about some of the usability on it. Do you have the ability to skip questions like the driver's license question?
Yes.
Okay, because I know it says next, but I think maybe having a skip option might help, because students will feel the need to put in something in that space if they don't see the skip option.
And that's something I think that would be great for you all to provide feedback about. We struggle with the fact that some of the questions on the FAFSA are truly optional. However, they're not for us to decide they're optional, because the questions are there because states or schools or whatever asked us to put it there. If we say you can skip it, we're saying it's optional, and then what's the point in having it there? So that's been a discussion that we've had repeatedly. Do we want to let people know that a question is optional? And we always land on the side of no, because that's not for us to identify. Now, if you just left it blank and proceeded that particular question, you'd be fine. But if we said it was optional, it's almost like we're saying don't bother, and then why do you have the question there at all?
And then for the back button, I saw it was in the top left corner, and maybe considering putting a previous button on the bottom, just because if you're so many questions in, do you have to hit that back button 5 or 6 times to get back to the home page? Or does hitting it once go one question back or back to the section?
One question. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Can you check that now? To answer your question, it would just go back one page, but there is a hamburger menu. For those of you who don't know what that is, I'm learning so much. It's the thing that looks like a hamburger, and if you click on it, it's got some options behind there, and one of them is an option to go back to the home.
Okay.
To the home page.
And sorry, I have a couple more questions. Another one is, I assume this is going to be only available if you're connected to internet. Have you considered having an offline version, or one where they can pre-fill once they connect it, auto uploads, or what's going to happen if you drop connection in the middle of filling it out?
That is a highly technical question that I don't believe I can answer, but we definitely, we are definitely, talking to the right people in order to make sure that the ultimate, design and the ultimate experience is going to work for people. Because, if you're connected to the internet, there's no guarantee it's going to stay that way. And we know that, not everybody has internet access all the time. So we're not keeping any data on the device, so you have to be able to get it from the CPS, but once you have it, I don't know. There are certain points, I think, where you have to have the ability to connect in order to get the data actually to CPS, but it may not be necessary for, like, connection at every moment. We have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's what he's asking, no, sorry.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
And I
Tammy,
have two more
Tammy
quick
was
ones.
talking about the ability for people to save as they go along and how we do the autosave in the event that the connection is broken. I think the question is more about, do you have to have that constant connection? And I think we're still probably talking about that.
And then for some of those text fields, students may be copying and pasting from other locations. Do you have rules set in place where it's going to get rid of extra spaces before text or after text so that you don't have issues later on?
That's something we want to explore.
Okay, we're exploring that right now as well.
And then last one, sorry. You were saying the example on the 2.1 that if the parent has auto DFC, you're not required the dependent student's information. How is that going to look on that homepage? Is that going to give them a green check mark, or is it going to gray it out where they can't even click on it so they're not accidentally going in?
So if you're an independent student and we don't need the parent information, we're graying out the section. So I believe we would do the same thing if it's a dependent student who's eligible for auto zero, because then they would be skipping the entire student finances section. So I think it's the same logic where so you've got the green, which means you completed it, you've got the blue, which means you're there, and you get sort of a gray thing with a line through it if it's a section you can completely skip. I haven't seen it yet, but I know that for the two parent sections, we do that if the student's independent. So I think you'd see the same thing for the student finances section in that case.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, again, first, great work to date. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If it's an independent student, is it possible just no parent data fields at all? That might simplify that really well.
If it's an independent student, there are no parent. We do have the one question that asks if you want to provide parent information because some students are required to do that. But otherwise, the
Skips
two
out.
parent sections, yeah, they don't. They
Good.
don't apply at all.
Legal state resident is where SoCal as well, so we get a lot of the parents are kind of worried about that. Legal, maybe that's one word to look at a little
Okay.
more carefully is where we can use that. Highest grade completed, we get a lot that it's primaria, so middle school is even above what that, so middle school or lower, elementary or middle, something along those lines would help them answer correctly instead of other or don't know. College order irrelevant, is it not, since they don't get that anymore, or is that
No,
not
it is
true?
still relevant to some state grant agencies, which is why we allow for the resorting.
Okay. How will the parents with no SSN, they can still use zeros and then
Correct.
a signature page later?
Yeah, well, they won't be, no, because the parent, sorry, if you are logged in as the student, you can enter all zeros for a parent that doesn't have a social security number. The parent will not be able to provide a signature in the app because they can't log in with an FSA ID because they can't get an FSA ID without an SSN. So in that case, the student would have to, I think, do the submission on the web so they could choose the option to submit without the parent signature, and then the parent would have to sign paper.
And then the parent has to generate the signature page?
The student can generate the signature page for the parent.
Through the
but
mobile
the
app?
parent, no. The only option for signing on the mobile app is with the FSA ID, so the parent cannot sign on the mobile app.
Okay. Individual questions per page when possible is really, really great for understanding everything. Leave the student financial information order as is, given your explanation of the simplified or zero EFC calculation. FSA parent one must be the FSA ID holder, is that right? FAFSA parent one?
We still have to define FAFSA
Still.
parent. I think we're going to have to get some input from policy to make sure that we define it properly, and we want to make sure it's clear. But presumably, if the marital status is something other than married or unmarried and living together, so the parent is single, then we have to make sure that we're defining it as, the parent you last lived with who provided more than 50, whatever, all those rules are. If the parents are married or unmarried and living together, so there's two parents, then we're going to have to probably provide some definition that's associated with, like, which parent's actually going to be, helping to answer the questions, which one will be providing the signature, that sort of thing. So we have to make sure that we're properly defining it. But I have made the assumption, and if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong, but I've made the assumption that it would be highly unlikely that two parents and the kid are all sitting down together filling this thing out. So more than likely there is one parent that's sort of taking that responsibility, and that's the person, in the case of married parents, that we would want to identify as the FAFSA parent, because they're going to sign.
Okay. And then parent info, how many in college in your parents' household do not include parent? Is there any way to let them know, do include yourself? Get a lot, we're doing
Well-
the reviews, they have an older sibling in, they have one in college, it should be two, they're forgetting themselves.
Okay.
And then just on behalf of all the students and parents I serve, I'd like to thank you guys very, very, very much. The state tying in idea is really great. And you joked about the rock star thing earlier. We do have a rock star in here, Mr. Mark Kantrowitz, FinAid, FastWeb, all like that. I want to recognize him in front of all my peers. Tremendous individual right there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to the next question, I just want to talk for just a moment about something else that Dr. Johnson touched on this morning, which is FAFSA 3.0. So what we're trying to do right now is create something that works within the confines of the current FAFSA question set and the way that the overall process works, so that what is started in the app can be completed in the app. But we have to recognize that some people will not want to complete it in the app. They'll want to move to the web. Once they submit, because we don't have correction functionality or the SAR or whatever, they'll have to use other ways. So we're working within those confines. However, FAFSA 3.0, we want to look at what rules would we change and how would we change them in order to create an experience and a FAFSA that truly is simplified. And so we have a couple of small invitation-only listening sessions that we'll be offering here at the conference. We have one today and we have one tomorrow. And so we would be asking for feedback about what those questions might be. If you are interested in participating, what am I doing? Am I giving Ed's email address? Or Ed will stand here, and then if you're interested in participating, then please come down and let him know, and he can give you the details about when and where it is, so that we can talk less about the app at that point and more about what would we include in an app that creates a truly simplified experience. Okay, now.
Quickly, for the high school name, city and name, will there be a possibility of searching like you do for the college?
There is. I think you kind of sped through that one, but it is, yes, it is a search.
Okay, and I know you're dealing with the role issues, but with the marital status for a dependent student, when they have to answer it for dependency status, it seems a little confusing, especially if the parent is the one taking the lead and doing it. If they say, yes, I'm married, when they really should be answering for the student and not the parent.
Right,
It just
so-
seems a little confusing.
So what KG did is he indicated that he was the student, and so the question was directed to him. But if he'd indicated he was the parent, then the question would have been the student's marital status. So all of the labels are customized based on the role you choose when you log in.
Okay.
So you just saw one example. It would look different if you saw
Great,
it
and then
as the
just
parent.
last suggestion, make it big and bold when the parent information is needed. That last screen when you get to the congratulations, you're a rock star. It seemed a little insignificant that parent information was still needed.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hi, Heather Clifford from Bennington, Vermont. I just want to thank you for giving us an opportunity to have feedback and a voice in how the product turns out. And I wondered if we could add the option for mother or father in both of those fields, so we could accurately describe same-sex couples. And then, will we eventually offer thumbprint recognition?
I think that's something that we certainly can discuss in the future, but it's not on the table for the spring release.
Okay. And a progress bar across the top, possibly. I just know that many students, when they did the DRT, once they transferred, they just thought they were done and they took off and had to go back in and do it. And I'm just wondering if when they see congratulations or you did it, that they're done, that they are concerned, that think they're done?
And so this isn't about your request for a progress bar, but that is our messaging right now online. Congratulations, you successfully transferred your information. We don't necessarily have to provide that sort of messaging when people use the DRT in here. So I think we can probably address that just with the messaging choices we make.
Okay. And I was just wondering what notification the parent would get, and maybe this has been answered directly, when the parent signature is required. Are they being notified, or is an email going out, or will it be an option that the student can say, click here, email my parent now?
I don't know if we've said, so this would be for 2.1.
Yeah.
the concept of 2.1. For 2.0, although they can identify at the beginning what their role is, so we can customize the labels, it's still the same concept as now, which is that it is the student's application. And so it would be up to the student to notify the parent that they need to, they could send a text, or they could send an email, or they could actually talk to mom and say, please sign my FAFSA. But currently, if I'm not mistaken, we do send emails if a signature is missing. Yeah, if a signature is missing.
Okay. Then my last was just a suggestion about this type of question answer, is if there's a way to tweet or email comments during the session, that you would have them all in one place, and you could select the questions that seemed most relevant to answer, kind of keeping it on target.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Just wondering if students will have the option to get registered for selective service through this, and if so, if it could be limited to the correct age range.
The skip logic should be the same for those questions as it is online. So we only ask if you're registered with selective service if you indicate your male, and we only ask if you want to be registered with selective service if you fall within the age range where you can register. So that logic exists online, and it will exist in the app as well. We didn't show that last question because we said we were registered, but if we had said no to that, it would have displayed that question, because I think the date of birth was 1999, so we would have been in the right age range. Okay.
Is the presentation going to be available after the conference?
There isn't a presentation, all we have is the slide.
I know, but you showed slides today of the...
We didn't show slides, that's the actual app.
Okay.
So no, we don't.
Nothing.
No, we don't have anything. You can, if you want to see it a little more, you can go down to the Resource Center and take a look at it. I believe, we're having conversations right now about what we might be able to put out for people, similar to the FAFSA on the web preview presentation we do, but we have been focusing our efforts on bringing this to you here, so we have a very long list of stuff to talk about when we get back. That's one of those things.
Is there an age limit on using the app?
You have to be at least 13.
13,
Yes.
just like on the FAFSA.
Yeah, well, you have to be at least 13 to get the FSA ID, and you can't get in without the FSA ID.
And I noticed when you were first entering the application, there wasn't an autofill. I know when I use my iPhone and I'm going on, let's say, banking, and it asks for my name, it auto-populates my name, my address. Is that a feature that's coming maybe in the 2.22?
We haven't talked about autofilling for those kinds of questions because it's going to pre-fill from the FSA ID. So remember, you're logging in with your FSA ID, and so we have the answers to those questions already. I'm not sure what else you're thinking we might be able to pre-fill. Because
Well,
Social
like my
Security,
address pre-filled.
which would
things
come
like-
from the FSA ID,
Okay.
so that's already pre-filled.
And I know a lot of students, when they do the FAFSA, the major concerns is that they don't understand that what selective service is, or even what a bachelor's degree is. Where is that information? I know on the paper FAFSA, that information is explained.
Right.
How is it going to be displayed on the app?
That's one of the things that we're looking for feedback about. So again, if you have time to go down to the Resource Center, we would love to hear your suggestions. We could do the little question mark icon like we showed. Kate, you went ahead and clicked on that and you saw the text that opened. We could utilize white space on the pages and cram it full of text, not my personal favorite solution. Do you have any other suggestions? Because we fully intend to provide help. We just have to make sure we're designing it in a way that people are going to access it, and that they're going to, actually read it, because we really do put a lot of effort into making sure we're providing good guidance. We want to make sure people can access it properly.
And I know it said messaging, and it's one of the, my messages.
My messages. Mhm.
So is it messaging the student, let's say their application is incomplete, is it going to tell them that in the messaging?
So we have defined my FAFSA. We have not defined the others. We have come up with some ideas of what might be behind the other tiles, but we're looking for feedback from everybody else. What would you expect to see behind there?
I would love to see a little icon when you go in. If I know there's a message when I go onto my phone, there's 2 messages, something like that, because that's what's going to call the student to do something or take action. And I guess my last one is language is very important. Saying congratulations when the application isn't complete, because that you just had the example, like congratulations. Students will assume they're done, but they're not done because parents' information is missing, and we know one of the major reasons why students' application might be incomplete because they haven't had their parents do the signature to the application. So I don't know if you want to use the word congratulations because that indicates you've done something fully and they haven't.
And that was the point where we provided the student signature, but still needed the parent, is that?
Students will skip that. They'll go, congratulations, I'm done. And that's the thing. Students see major words and accept that as the end result. So just a feedback from dealing with students. They don't read all the way through. They see the key words and stop.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 minutes left.
Okay, I'll make mine quick. Quick question. I don't know if I missed this, but will there be mobile access to create the FSA ID as well?
So we are having conversations about that right now, so I can't commit one way or the other.
Okay. A suggestion, can we make the date fields numeric where you can enter them versus scrolling through? I think scrolling through is a little outdated, I want to say. Especially for the parent. Also, can we add a definition for dislocated worker? I noticed they just had the question, yes or no. When I'm helping students, they ask that all the time.
Right.
So it'll be easier if it's like the smaller print underneath.
So can I just pause you for 1 second there? One of the changes that you'll see both in the app and in the responsive application that we're going to be putting out in the spring is to the dislocated worker question. The purpose of that question is to determine if somebody's eligible for the simplified path. Right now, we ask everybody that question. We're going to change that in April. It's going to work the same way as the means tested benefit questions and the were you eligible to file a 1040A or EZ question. If your income is too high for you to qualify, or if you already qualify for the simplified path based on how you've already answered questions like your type of tax return filed, we're not going to ask that question anymore. So fewer people will struggle with it. Those who do get it, that gets back to the whole how do we display help to people? How do we make help available to them? I think what I hear from you is you're suggesting that we include something as part of the question instead of making it a separate help topic.
Correct.
And we'll add that to our
Okay, just two more. Also, I know that I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, that you said the color switching between student and parent will change. So, especially on the mobile app, my suggestion is that there's another like complete screen takeover that says you are now about to report, parent info, or you are now reporting student financials, just to make that more visible. I know I looked away, and when I looked up again, I was kind of confused on which area we were speaking about. Lastly, I remember that as you were going through, it said that the student can enter all their information. It would notify the parent to enter their financial information, financial information, FSA ID, and then the student will have to go back and log in to submit. Is there a possibility that if the student has completed all of their sections, after the parent completes theirs, that it just submits automatically?
So remember that this is the true roles-based solution, which is something that we need to figure out, and we're trying to get feedback about that. 2.0, the questions will be asked in the order that we ask them now, which means that the parent information and then the parent financial questions, then the student information, and then the signatures are collected at the end. So that is not going to be any different. What we're trying to figure out with a roles-based solution is what order do you ask the questions in? If the parent is answering their stuff before the student gets to their stuff, can they just sign for that part, and then they're done so that when the student comes in and they do their financial information, then they just sign, so that's some of the stuff that we're having to work out. But again, what we're planning to release in the spring is not that roles-based solution. We're still trying to tackle that stuff and see how we could make that work. And I apologize, but the lovely lady here with the stop sign looks really adamant, and I'm pretty sure she's not going to let me keep going.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Please come to the Resource Center and give us your feedback. We're doing 2 more of these sessions, so you're also welcome to come back and provide feedback at those. Thank you.